Welcome to the Rumi Forum Faith and Food event. This is a unique gathering of friends and speakers to discuss the relationship between food and faith. I will call upon the gracious host and owner of the restaurant that is hosting us, restaurant being Sakina, and our close friend and brother, Kazi, will introduce himself and provide some opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a great honor to have you all here. Such a wonderful event, such a wonderful people who believe in the philosophy, are interfaith, giving back, and uniting all faith. So I won't take too long. I will introduce myself. My name is Kazi Manan. I migrated from Pakistan back in '96 with $3 in my pocket to have a big dream, and I am one of the lucky ones who achieved that dream that I had to be successful financially. And today our restaurant become Light and Hope, providing over 80,000 meals to the homeless community since we started this campaign back in 2013. Thank you. And my story become viral, over 100 million views in 7 weeks. So that's how when you do a little great things in the community, that's how you can. So we have to unite. Today is time for the unity. The all faith, we're worshiping the same God who is so merciful, so kind to all of us, and providing us such a beautiful platform through Rumi Forum. I thank you, Brother Amir, the host of bringing people together. Rumi Forum is a really, you guys should, I know you guys know more than me, a Rumi Forum, been there a long time, providing a platform of interfaith dialogue, bringing communities and faith together. Today, that's why I say it's so important to actually unite, because the division is tearing us apart. And thank you again. I won't take that long. And Brother Amir, I'll give back to you. And I'm looking forward to have a great speaker here that are so inspiring for all of us to share their stories, to share their knowledge with us. I am thankful again to all of you to coming here and giving me the opportunity to serve you and give and share my love with you. Thank you.
Yes, for those that are attending a Rumi Forum event for the first time, make sure you sign up for our newsletters. We're in our 20th year. This is a significant milestone for us. We've been doing this for 2 decades now, and a significant bit of information is we were founded pre-9/11 as a group of Muslim Americans that sought to bring people together irrespective of cultural or faith background. So we've been doing this for a while now and looking at, of course, unique opportunities like this one, unique themes. And with Ramadan coming, we're going to be having some other events as well. And particularly this year, we'll be in our 7th year for the pre-fasting breakfast, which is known as Sahur, which starts at 3 a.m. Obviously, it's been successful that we've been able to do that for 6-7 years now. So if you're daring enough to get up at 3 a.m., and we do have about 120 people turn up to that every year. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it, obviously, if people weren't turning up. And I know that Brother Kazi will be looking forward to hosting you at 3:30 a.m. during the month of Ramadan, which is in May, predominantly in May this year. So I'm going to call our first speaker to the podium. You have all the speakers' details in the invitation, so I'll give a brief introduction. Dr. Zulfikar Kazmi is the founder and executive director of the Common Grounds USA. He'll be providing remarks from a Muslim perspective. So please welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the most merciful and beneficent. I'm really thankful that I have been invited at the Rumi Forum. I have a friendship with Rumi Forum from a long time while I was in Pakistan. We were working together. Unfortunately, the things moved in a different direction. And now Rumi Forum is not working, but the hearts and minds of the people are with Rumi Forum in Pakistan. What people think about Rumi Forum, I could not explain to you that how much love they have with Rumi Forum in Pakistan as well. And I believe that in other nations, the Rumi Forum is working in the same way. Today we have to talk about a very unique subject. The subject which we are handling every day. We sometimes do not talk, but our actions are expressing about the subject. Faith and food. I think both these things go together. What God is saying in Holy Quran, that give the food in my love to the people. Surah Al-Insan. In my love, give the food to the people. It means the food giving is conditional with the love of God. If we honor our God, our Creator, then we love the people and we give the food to them. It's very essential that how Quran is saying about food and faith and how people are taking it. Actually, if we see in America, every day we see, and we are handling one thing that is a very important instrument which we keep in our pockets every time, and we are going to exchange with the people, that is $1. But it says, in God we trust. And this is the dollar which is being used to buy the food and buy the other things. And then we think about that it's an instrument which is saying that in God we trust, and we are buying the food as well. If we are feeling in a right sense, then we should responsible ourselves, we should help responsible ourselves that food should go to the people who they are in need. So these are the common traditions and things which are in our society that we should think about, that how this subject is very important. I would like to give you a perspective of those nations which are not being discussed in many ways. In Pakistan, you could see many holy shrines, many places where the Sufis and the Awliya Allahs are buried. And at their holy shrines, you could see that long queue, and people are getting the food from those places. And this is the way that how people are coming to the faith towards one thing which is common between the people of faith, and they are getting the food and they are celebrating the love of each other. Here we have to think about that how much food is being wasted in the world and how we are treating our leftover. If we are just giving our leftover, because what food we ate, it was mine. What I left, it belongs to someone else. So we should not, disrespect, discard and waste the food. Food is from God, from the Creator, and we in that way, when we discard the food, we trash it. Actually, we are not disrespecting the food, actually we are disrespecting our God. We have to think about how we could take care of others. I think the Rumi Forum have drawn our attention towards one very important thing. And as I have quoted one verse of Holy Quran, that how the Holy Quran is speaking so high about the food and faith. And Holy Quran is saying, if you love to God, then you have to feed other people, And another thing which is very important, once Prophet narrated, and the hadith is narrated by Abu Huraira. What he's saying, that God will ask us that I was hungry, you did not feed me. I was thirsty, you did not, meet my thirst, And then the person will say, God, you are beyond all these needs. How I could believe that you were thirsty, you were hungry. But God will be saying, one person came to your door and you neglected, you rejected his need. And I was at your door in shape of that person. So these are the things which are so important in our society, in our countries, in our nations, in our communities, and in the world. But food is being wasted. It's our responsibility to save it because it's a portion of someone else. So what I've seen, because the information is available, but we are not handing that information to inform the others, to make aware others that what is happening. Our responsibility should be that we should aware to the people that wastage of food is a disrespectful way to say, God, that we are the believer, but we are not following your commandment. So this is very important. My heart goes to my brother, Kazi. Every time when I come here, I see one thing, that how people are loving him, how people are hugging him, just because of one reason. Because he has opened the door, not for his customers, for the humanity as well. If someone is needy, he is, meeting his needs. So this is very important thing that we should see, that how we could see our neighbor, how we could see the others who they are in need. Our neighbors are most important. But a few minutes before, my brother, Honorable Imam Siddiqui, was talking to about the neighbors. That we are not looking towards our neighbors. We do not know who is living in next door. It is some kind of negligence, and negligence is bringing something which is not desirable to God. God has created us one nation under God. Every day we pledge here. America is a role model for other countries as well. When we see the dollar, what dollar is saying. When we see in schools, children pledge to the flag. What they say, one nation under God. One nation under God means that we are the family of God. And how we could respect them, how we could love them. And here I would like to quote another quote, from the Holy Quran. That hold fast, all of you, to the rope of Islam, and do not create disunity among yourselves. If we are neglecting, disrespecting, and rejecting our neighbor, our friend, our closest people, then it means that we are going against the will of God. We should not go against the will of God. Food and faith go together, and we need to go together with the food and faith as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to say food for thought, but that may be a cliche that I was saving for the summary. But let me now call upon Jody Ballas, who has worked for 15 years in community public health in the non-profit sector as a culinary educator, dietitian and nutrition director. She's currently involved with the Rental Consulting, and she'll provide a Jewish perspective on Food and Faith. Please welcome her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the main question is, how is the food? It smells amazing. Is it good? Good. Delicious. And I'm glad that you all look very well fed now. That's good. And thank you to our hosts. Thank you very much. And thank you to the Rumi Forum for having this very important discussion and opportunity to learn from one another around the topic that connects us all together, food. I do briefly, before I go into the Jewish connections with food, I do just want to share a little bit about the work that I did spend 15 years involved with, and that was the work of hunger and advocacy and the relationship between food and social justice. I worked for an organization called the Capital Area Food Bank. Yes. Yay! The largest hunger relief organization in the DC area. And why I'm mentioning this today is because the food bank was established in 1980 by an interfaith group. There were Jewish leaders, Christian leaders, Muslim leaders that came together as a response to, in the current political situation at the time, cuts to food assistance. Neighbors, the community was suffering. And there was this interfaith gathering and collecting of ideas and resources to address how can this be happening and how can we together be leaders and help feed the community. So the food working in this area, this to me was the intersection of food and faith, which was a space of humanity, of helping one another. And today, the food bank, which I recently moved on from that work, they distribute 45 million pounds of food through a network of 450 organizations. The majority of those organizations are faith-based organizations feeding their neighbors. And so to me, that's where food and faith meet, where it's a verb, right? Where we're acting to help one another. Now, for the Jewish connections, I wanted to just sort of share a little bit about Judaism and Jewish ritual and food. Now, what moves Judaism forward, Jewish life forward on a day-to-day basis? The pulse that moves things forward is the life cycle, the yearly cycle. Jewish tradition is all about coming together to ritualize and to celebrate the year. And there are times of the year that there are celebrations, and I'm just going to kind of briefly give an overview of those times of the year. But I have to say that every single one of those moments in time revolves around food. Food is either central to the celebration, or there's some sort, and when I say central, it's essential. And I'm going to talk a little more specifically about the next holiday, Passover. But it's either essential or it's a symbolic complement, or it elevates the gathering. And so just like a broad overview, the Jewish New Year, which usually falls around fall time, September, October, is marked by eating sweet foods and round foods. There is a holiday that actually is all about the omission of food. Fasting, which is a practice in many traditions. This holiday, Yom Kippur, the most important holiday of the year, is actually, what we're doing is we're practicing our own death. And food, and omitting from food and all kind of bodily functions during that day, or pieces that are brushing our teeth, eating, even putting on deodorant, we step back from those for one day and go into deep reflection. There is another holiday, one of my favorites, that actually falls in a category of harvest holidays, where food connects us to agricultural roots. So there are harvest holidays where I practice this with my family. We actually build a hut in our backyard. And in this holiday, it connects us to the lineage toward the agricultural times, where part of the celebration was coming to the centralized spiritual place, Jerusalem, and bringing your harvest as part of that celebration. So there are harvest holidays. There is the holiday of Hanukkah, where we immerse our food and drench it in oil to mark the miracles. There's another one of my favorites is a holiday celebrating the birthday of trees. Oh, I love that one. It's actually kind of considered a Jewish Earth Day, but you acknowledge trees and all that they give us, and you look at different kinds of fruits that have pits in the middle, fruits that have inedible outer parts, and you actually assign spiritual qualities to those foods and reflect on those spiritual qualities as your own. So, again, all sorts of food-related moments of celebration that you can sort of mark the year with. But the last one, and I'll spend my last few minutes talking about, is the holiday of Passover. So, which is coming up in about 3 weeks. Now, the holiday of Passover is all about food on every level, spiritual, physical, everything. The Passover story is the central story in the Jewish religion of a people coming together from a place of constriction and slavery to a transformed place of openness and freedom. That's the central story in a central story in the Jewish practice. And part of celebrating that is coming together in a meal, to eat a meal. And this is not just any meal where you just eat and enjoy. This is an ordered meal. It's called a seder, Passover Seder. And there's a specific order to tell this specific story. The first invocation, the first announcement in this meal, all who are hungry, come and eat. All who are hungry, come and eat. This is an invitation for everybody to come around the table. And growing up, our best friends with my family, they were Italian Catholic family, and there were several priests in the family. So we had Italian Catholic priests coming to our Seder who were just so excited to sort of revel in an Old Testament story. And it was so great to have their perspective and have them at the table. But all who are hungry, come and eat. And then the other food pieces of this story are one, the central food piece, matzah. Matzah is flat, unleavened bread. It is a symbolism. It symbolizes slavery. It symbolizes ego deflation and oppression. And we are commanded to eat this food all week. And not only that, we're also supposed to take out all of the food that is not matzah, any kind of bread. There's a whole list of restrictions. You actually excommunicate those out of your house. You don't want anything to do with it, because this is the time to reflect on what does it mean to go from a small space to an inclusive space. Other food parts is the Seder plate, which actually tells the story of slavery to freedom, and food is the language that tells that story. So there's salt water on the Seder plate to represent tears of being enslaved. There's spring vegetables that are eaten to represent renewal and the spring vegetables that are now, in fact, coming up from the earth. There is actually a shank bone. Vegetarians have taken to use a beet, actually, on the Seder plate, that actually represents animal sacrifices that are now have been replaced as prayer. So there are all of these foods that when you look down to it, you're looking at a food story that it's told in the language of food, but it's a story of transformation, trauma, and resilience. And that story, as we know, has inspired many large social movements. We're commanded to drink 4 glasses of wine. And yes, when I was 10, I had the experience of being drunk. Because grape juice also is an option, but you drink 4 cups of wine too, that also has this level of symbolism. So all of this to say, Passover really puts all of this together. The physical act of eating, inclusion, talking about what it means to be human, physically reenacting the connection of feeling enslaved and those human themes to what it means today. And I just want to close actually on a personal note, because There's so much around coming together around food in Judaism. Judaism also has rituals built into it to sensitize us to gratitude, to be grateful. And so I've been talking a lot about communal, but on the personal level, there's a ton of blessings about food. And when you see a fig tree, and I just wanted to share the story that every Friday night is the Jewish Sabbath, and a special bread, food is eaten. Challah, has anybody ever had challah before? It's so good. So it's a fortified enriched honey egg bread that's grated, and it's a traditionally eaten food on the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night. My daughter was eating the challah on this Friday that I made. I make it every Friday, and it makes the house smell so good as it smells in here. And my 7-year-old was eating this food, and she said to me, "Mom, I think we should try something new. After we eat the challah every week, I think we should say 3 things that we're thankful for that God gave us." And I was kind of blown away by this, because here my 7-year-old is eating challah, and she's just feeling inspired. She had this personal experience to want to express gratitude just by eating this food. So all of this to say is I hope this sort of gave some insight into perspective about the connection in Jewish tradition and in the foods that we eat. And I thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Reverend Canon Leonard Hamlin Sr. began his tenure at the Washington National Cathedral in April 2018. In his role, Dr. Hamlin oversees the cathedral's outreach and social justice initiatives. Please welcome him.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today, and thankful to be able to share with everyone as we have this special moment where we could really encourage one another. Over the years, in coming to the cathedral, this is the kind of work that I was doing even before arriving, but I'm thankful to be at the cathedral now, taking up, as we said, leading the social justice work as well as our interfaith relationships. So I'm grateful to the Rumi Forum and for hosting this, and those speakers who have gone before me, as well for the sharing moment that we had. And as I have the opportunity to talk about food and faith from the Christian perspective, food and really faith, it goes together and is central to all that we do because of just what I raised in terms of its sharing. When we talk about this, and I'm grateful to be able to come behind, of course, my sister here, in that central to the Christian faith is the meal that we know as communion, which really comes out of Jesus with his disciples gathering and saying, "Prepare the Passover meal." And that at that Passover meal was instituted, of course, what we share as communion. But even in its foundation, it took place at a table where a meal was being prepared, to really encourage us to have hospitality and relationship, and even in the sharing, and all of its symbolisms that are lifted up there, that it is very central to the Christian faith, that as we look at sharing in that meal, all that took place in their conversation, all that was lifted up in the hospitality, all that was there in the symbolisms, which I'll talk a little bit about, but in that we find that meaning. And in our discussions, oftentimes, we go back and we look at the scriptures, and we're often looking at how food was central to bringing people together. How food was always, in many moments, on the table. Even as it was talked about in the Passover, coming out of slavery in there. How food was provided in the wilderness through the manna, they were eating, and God providing for them there. And then as we read in the scriptures, even at the miracle of the feeding, as we talked of the feeding of the 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. In the midst of that there's a relationship between body and spirit. And that we all have to wrestle with that. We wrestle with it in our own ways, but in this, we wrestle with our understanding of what we do in our actions and what we do in our spirit. And we both have to be strengthened in a particular way. And so as we share food, and it is very simple, we say all the time, there are moments where we feel as if we're better able to do what we need to do after we've eaten, after we share, after we've laughed together, we share stories with each other. And we're strengthened not only because of the meal that helps us individually, but of course the spirit of conversation and hospitality that gets to be shared communally. So that's why I'm grateful to be here today as well, too, that we have a moment where we're sharing and talking one with another, where we're sharing and being able to not only find strength for our bodies, but hopefully when we leave here, we'll have strength for our spirit as well. So when we look at the symbolism, there's so many symbols in and around food within the Christian tradition that even within the communion, we know that the bread, which we often, he says, do this in remembrance of me, that the bread is there in terms of the strength and remembering the sacrifice that was given. And we talked today that the food that we have, and I just will talk about this a little bit further, the food that we have did not just appear. There was a lot of sacrifice that went into its growth, its preparation, all that was brought here, and that we never take it for granted. It's already been lifted, and I'd say that if we get it into its fullness, God has provided the food. But in that, so much has gone into the preparation and the sacrifice that we live in a generation now where we take that for granted. That we go in and we just pull off the shelves and forgetting those who sometimes are working and sacrificing and doing so much to make sure that there is not, for many of us, not just enough, but an abundance of food. That in our tradition we would say, where your cup is running over, so full in that. So we share and we think about the bread, we think about the sacrifice, we think about when we talk about the fruit of the vine and the wine that is shared, in the fellowship, in the spirit, and the covenant of the agreement that has been made to hold things in the truths and the sacrifices and the understanding. And so when we get together around that table, so much is remembered and so much in terms of what God has done is lifted in that. And beyond that, when we look at in the symbolism of the Christian faith, we have where, of course, that meal after the resurrection is lifted where he met the disciples on the shore and he shared a fish meal with them. And so fish is often used as a symbol to remember. And as the meal in there, we share that and the cooked fish. Not only in that, but we know we have milk and honey that often gets lifted about the abundance and all that is provided. Olives are often used within the Christian tradition. And this changes denominationally in even the Christian faith. But all of these, to most persons, will stir some thoughts through the food about what our obligations and our commitments are and what we're supposed to do. It has already been lifted, and we said that when we talk about providing for food, that we are to be mindful of those who are hungry and those who are in need. And that what we have, we've not just been given for ourselves, but we've been given to share with our neighbors. And the real question of that has often been lifted is, who is my neighbor? And truth is, all of us need to see each other as our neighbors. And so as we think about that, as you wrestle with that, as we're sharing one with another, what I really hope from this forum and the moments that we have is that because we've had a chance to just sit for a moment to eat together, that we'll go out of here being neighborly. We'll go out of here seeing each other different than perhaps the way we walked in the door. We'll go out of here being able to not just wait for others to come to us, but we'll be the one reaching for those who sometimes we often know as strangers, but they will become here neighbors and friends beyond that. So I say thank you for the opportunity to be able to share at this moment. And I hope that wherever we are, when we're passing again, and I'm looking around the room, because I often take this so that if I see faces, that when we see each other again, we can be the witnesses of what it means to be hospitable one to another, so that when others see us talking and they're with one with each other, they will have some model of what it means to come together, join together, not just because we live by address next to each other. And even today, that's difficult for some people. But they know that we are brothers and sisters because of the faith and what we bring to the table. So I'm grateful to be at the table with you on this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have a few moments for question and answers. We have one mic, so I'm going to ask that you speak loudly so our speakers can hear. We maybe get some speaker to come here just so it's easier logistically. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll put it to our lovely speakers. And no questions about the recipe because I believe it is a secret. But any other questions acceptable?
Mine is not a question, it's a comment. I just want to thank you guys for hosting this event. And I really enjoy the speakers and the brotherliness of the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I also thank Kazi and the Rumi Forum and all the staff at Sakina Halal Grill for hosting and for all your ongoing incredible work serving humanity. I'm Buddhist. My name's Rachel, and I was raised Catholic and went to Hebrew school too. Why not? So I've had a lot of food traditions throughout my own life, and I often, when multi-faith communities come together, either in joy and celebration or in sadness and solidarity, I often notice that some of the Buddhist voices are not in the same rooms or table. So there's some food traditions within Buddhist communities that is not to overdo anything, because it's at the heart of what's called the Eightfold Path of the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, and that's to not have attachments. To have great attachments, either emotional or physical, to not intoxicate yourself, which could also mean overeating. So, but that being said, I've lived in Buddhist countries, predominantly Buddhist countries like Thailand, for about 3 years. There's a lot of celebration of food in that country. But a lot of the food giving has to do with honoring the ancestors as well, and those that came before on a daily basis, but also on a monthly basis, because a lot of their holidays fall on the lunar calendar, so monthly on the full moon. I just thought I'd bring a little bit of a Buddhist perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We have one here, please. Clear voice.
Thank you again. My name is Mustafa. I'm a Muslim, and I know a bit about Islam, what it says about wasting food. So it's basically haram, so you must not waste food. So I wonder what Christianity or Judaism think about wasting food. Is there any specific rule?
Maybe you can just stand instead of move because it's a little bit there.
That's a great question. The first thing that popped into my mind was this concept of tithing, where there is a commandment to take what has fallen in your field and to help feed the hungry with what would otherwise become waste. And this is a little bit related, but not as much directly to waste, but there's a new designation. So there's definitely like a level of, there's a lot of rules around purity of food, very similar to halal. It's called kosher laws, and a new designation is called eco-kashrut. So there's this idea of that humanity, fair trade, and looking at a lot of the environmental practices and sustainability around those food practices. There's a new designation of it. Something can be kosher if it follows those guidelines. So those are two.
There's always a conversation about gluttony or excess, in that we should not be given to that. And so it doesn't speak to that directly in that, but in understanding that we're not supposed to be overindulging or wasting in that. And the passage that I was raising, even that we often discuss in and around waste or food, after the feeding of the 5,000, there were 12 baskets left over. And it was really instructed to gather up the fragments. And so we're supposed to gather those up. And those who would be interpreting that or speaking to it often speak about that we were gathering those fragments up so that we knew that all that was provided should not be wasted or left on the ground, but they would come to be needed in the hours or the days that would follow in that. So in our blessings, while he has provided for the moment, we're supposed to be mindful that sometimes, as I said, the blessings are so great that we should gather them up, knowing that they're there. But we have to see it not just as waste or leftovers, but we have to see it as part of the provision and then gather them up. So even those who are not present can still benefit from the blessings that we have in the moment.
I think that enough has been said about the question you have raised, but I would like to add one thing. Very small thing. Yes. Because we never understand one thing. That's most of the people never understand one thing, but they share it. How God wants us to share with others. If we are having a clear concept of sharing, then we are never, abusing food and discarding the food and wasting the food. We are just 2 blocks away from the White House. I think that the leadership can create a culture of food and faith as well. It's very important. It's a very important time. And another thing which I want to tell you, that good things happen every day in human lives. But sometimes we are not focusing the good things. Yesterday, there was a great event in Muslim communities. That's one riyaz, one langar, and one food distribution of one day that is in the name of Imam Jafar Sadiq. That was a kunde. That's called kunde. It's a very traditional riyaz and distribution of food. And every Muslim, I have seen, they were sharing the food in Baltimore and in this area and Washington, D.C. and Virginia. They were sharing the food with the neighbors. They were asking them to come and to eat the food together. So we have many things like traditions in faith and many things according to our community traditions as well. So we should keep those traditions and we should promote those traditions as well, that how we could address all these things. Food must not be wasted. It is not from me, not from you. It's from God. And God never likes that his things should be wasted.
Yes, we have time for one more question.
My name is Hassan. I was born in Tehran. My discipline is engineering, and part of that is observation. Now, we're talking about food and wastefulness or something about that. I just want to ask all of you, look down at your plate right now. See how much food is left in your plate. Now, then you should not criticize the other people. That why did you do that? Of course, I have a table mate. She finished all of her food. I finished all of my food. It was only bones thing that I couldn't eat, so I took it there. And true, everything that has been created is for us to survive. So there's sacrifice for us, the time of eating. And sometimes I don't even talk while I'm eating, because that's a very high kind of, making ibadah. So I don't know where the question is this, that I know for sure in America we waste maybe 40% of our food items. And we are Christians or Jewish or Muslims or Buddhists or some form of belief.
40% waste, and then if you look down your place right now, you see that we are representative of all of that. So don't go far, go within yourself and try to correct. And one more observation, my brother talked about feeding the spirit or soul, because spirit doesn't need anything. It's the soul that needs nourishing. Thank you.
Did anyone want to comment from the speakers? Did you want to comment on that? Further comment?
Oh no, I'm agreeing with my brother. As I was saying, sometimes we'll get into, I'm right with you, the semantics of how we will express that. But my expression, I want to say I'm united with you in what you're saying. I may be using, which I appreciate from school, where we, as we said, from Eastern, Western, we may have the different expressions and terminology. Because I'll even be in the same congregation, sitting next to someone who will use the soul and the spirit interchangeably. But I just want to say I'm right with you with where you are.
If not, then I'm going to formally thank our speakers. Thank you. Thank you one and all for attending. May all our meals be prosperous and blessed. May we be able to sit and share with friends, neighbors, and even strangers in the tradition of Abraham. From the Muslim perspective, we know that Abraham would not eat until he had someone sit across from him, be it a friend, neighbor, or stranger. If he didn't eat with anyone, he would not eat. And so did the other prophets, including Prophet Muhammad. So that's a very important tradition. I hope we're able to follow such traditions, sharing our food along with today's theme. We look forward to hosting you at other Rumi Forum events, of course. So get onto our newsletter, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and everything else that's out there. And again, thank you. A special thank you to our host, Brother Kazi, and Sakina, who hosted us. And of course, if you haven't already seen the numerous clips on Kazi's philanthropy regarding serving homeless food, please Google and you'll come across very important news items regarding the wonderful work he personally does through this institution. So it's more than a restaurant, it really is a philanthropic endeavor. So thank you again. Everyone have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.